All right, we are live on Facebook. Looks like we're live on YouTube here as well. Welcome into DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Let's position these cameras a little bit better. Make sure you get a better look at me. Got a little more sun shining out my kitchen window today, so a little bit more natural light. That's looking a bit better. Got a little light here in the room to help me as well. And I'm glad to have all of you here as well to help me too as we talk some Georgia football. We'll have a podcast edition of our program coming up a little bit later on. I'm kind of off center here on YouTube, but a little bit Facebook there as well. But nonetheless, we're going to have to make the best of this situation. So we're going to have a fun conversation. We'll look forward to talking to all of you today. I'll also tell you about this as Jay Shipes checks in on YouTube. Tomorrow afternoon, 3 p.m., we're going to do something really fun, first of its kind, where live on video, all four of the folks at DawgNation you hear from the most, myself, Mike Griffith, Jeff Sintel, Connor Riley, we're going to all be a part of a live edition of what we call Cover 4, when the four of us get together, and sometimes you see us writing and opining on things on the site. Well, we're going to do that video-wise tomorrow at 3 p.m. It's going to be on the DawgNation YouTube page, and it'll eventually migrate over to Facebook and probably everything else. But it's going to be on YouTube to begin with tomorrow at 3. It'll be there live then. So if you're normally a Facebook watcher, if you can join us tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. for a special edition of Cover 4 Live on the YouTube page, certainly look forward to seeing you there and would love to have you there for all of that. We'll have a lot to talk about here in our video today. Part of this is going to be about something that Kirby Smart talked about yesterday. Smart did meet with reporters. He was kind of doing that during my show. So I wasn't on the call, wasn't a part of that, but luckily Connor Riley was, Mike Griffith was, and there's some really good stuff that you can read at DawgNation.com. And over the course of the next couple of days, we'll kind of get into all of this, what Smart had to say there. Just kind of dealing with the unknowns of all of this right now as the coronavirus continues to kind of impact us. By the way, Real Dream XP checking in from Dubai. Real Dream, hope you're doing well. Thanks for staying safe, and we appreciate you being with us here today. So Smart's obviously dealing with the unknown about this, but also simultaneous to that, trying to do as much as you can to get the season going, get on the tracks for that. I think there have been some kind of, it's a weird news cycle, y'all. I'll admit this. But I think there have been some nice little silver linings here and there. Obviously, the overall news the last 24 to 48 hours involving the virus has not been that great. I'm not going to lie to you and say that it has been. It's been pretty tough. But in the midst of that, you know, we're going to talk on the podcast today about something that Steve Spurrier recently said. I'll read the quote to you in terms of once we get the all clear from a health standpoint, that getting the season up and running might not be as hard to do as some coaches have suggested that it might be. There was a really interesting poll from Brett McMurphy, who's a college football writer, who talked to more than 100 college athletic directors and asked them their feelings on the season. And more than 50% of them believe that the season will take place as scheduled this upcoming year. So if you're looking for some good news, if you're looking for some silver lining, that's indeed, I think, some of the stuff that's out there. That former coach is saying it may not be quite that hard to get the season up and running. And a lot of athletic directors still really striking an optimistic tone, really believing that we can indeed do that. And in some form or fashion, that will take place. We need that good news right now. We are in a challenging time. People are being asked now to hunker down a little longer, which is not typically, you know, the kind of thing that people necessarily want to hear. But you get a sense, at least I do anyway. I hope you feel the same way. You get a sense that over the course of the last couple of days, that there's a real spirit of unity forming. And there is a feeling of we're all in this together. We're going to do our part. We're going to work together and put aside differences and just get to the business of keeping our neighbors healthy and safe and rebuilding our society eventually. You get the sense that that's kind of a growing sentiment out there, which I think is a really nice thing. And it's really the story of America, that over the course of centuries, we just rise up and meet challenges. And I get the sense that we're rising up to meet this challenge as well. And the reward for doing so may very well be football this fall. So that's obviously the plan that we are thinking about here. That's the goal that we have in place to be able to do that. And so with that in mind, we'll take some of your comments. By the way, Jamie Bailey of Indigo said I was looking good. Hope y'all see I got the Gator Hater t-shirt on today. And not to, rub it in and brag, but this is also the original Gator Hater t-shirt, the one that has the DawgNation Daily logo on the side. This was the first one of these that we produced. years and years ago, long time ago. So this is like out of like the back of the Dog Nation closet here, the original Gator Hater T-shirt. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good to be able to wear that today. And by the way, my buddy Eddie loves to be able to see that too. And I gotta say, somebody said the beard was looking fresh. Yeah, Jermaine Jones says the beard's looking fresh. I would say that now officially you can call this a beard. I think before what it was just like kind of a glorified 5 o'clock shadow. But I mean, if you look at certain aspects of the face here, I mean, this is like a legit beard now. Now, if you really kind of examine below the chin, it's a little grayer than I wish it was. But I think that now this is kind of officially becoming a beard. So I appreciate that. Colby Curry says, well, all those shirts may be available for purchase. We need that fire, BA. Boy, I wish I could. I'd love nothing more to you. Michael Porter, thanks for the kind words as well. Appreciate that. James Moore says, I want one now, BA. Got to have it. Don't hold out. See you in Jacksonville. Oh, we're going to be going. Yeah, I can't wait to be there. I was thinking about this as just sort of a humorous aside for a moment. I think by official decree, I am going to declare that in the horrid event that the Georgia-Florida game, I believe will happen, but in the event it will not be played, I do declare that the days that pass before the next time the game is played, I do declare that those are counties that get counted up before the next time these two teams play do officially go on the Raider Updater. So if you're curious about that, we did get a rules clarification on that late last night, so keep that in mind. By the way, let me also say this too on a totally different subject. So, like, one of the things you see a lot of people talking about, like, during this time is like the whole, hey, when you binge watching while you're, while you're locked down. I know a lot of you are watching Tiger King on Netflix. That's been a huge topic, seemingly on social media. I've kind of joked before that when you have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, there isn't quite as much time for binge watching. You know, I've probably seen more Nickelodeon and Disney Junior than I've seen anything else, unfortunately. I did get to watch some TV last night. If you have HBO, I don't know if you do or not. I think it was the debut last night. That documentary on the FBI college basketball case, it was terrific. We don't talk a ton of college basketball on here, and I can't really get into the allegations because I don't know what's true and what's not. I'm doing that right about now. But nonetheless, if you just want a juicy sports soap opera, they have a really long interview with like the main guy who was like a runner for a lot of these, at least allegedly a runner for a lot of these players involved in this college basketball cheating scandal the FBI got involved with. This is very juicy TV. So if you've got HBO, it's not a series, it's just a show. But man, really well done. Really well done. Really well done. Dallas Schwartz says it's buffering. I have not had that problem, y'all. I hope that's not a problem because I really haven't had that problem. Breda Pest Management, he says I stole his thunder. Maybe he wanted to talk about the HBO Lips. Can you help a brother out with a Gator Hater T-shirt? Boy, I wish I could. Maybe I'm unfair by wearing this today. Our stock on those is depleted, and much like toilet paper, I'm not quite sure we're going to get more in. So people are saying that it's buffering. I don't understand that. So I do know that some people in my neighborhood have internet issues. I have not had internet issues, and I don't know if something on my would cause that. I'm not quite so sure, but I'll look into that. I'm sorry, but the best that I can tell, my signal here is pretty strong. Elite GB says his is not. I do know that one of the people, like a lot of the people in my neighborhood who have one of the major internet providers have had trouble with that, but so far we've been kind of fine. I'll have to look into this. So I apologize if you're having issues on YouTube. Try to stay with us if you can, but it seems like the folks on Facebook are kind of fine. So maybe hop over there if you can, because I'd love to take your comments and just be a part of the show here today. Real Dream XP says if we beat Bam, and by the way, his internet seems to be working in Dubai, so it can't be that bad. He says if we beat Bam in the third game and lose to them in the SEC championship game and miss the college football playoff, would this season be considered a success or a failure? Boy, that's a great question. And unfortunately, I think we know the answer to that stopping short of getting past the SEC championship game this season, no matter what the circumstances are that cause that to happen, that'll be treated as a huge disappointment. If you want to call it a failure, I think that's fair to say. That doesn't mean the championship window for Georgia's closing. I think it's still open 2021, 2022, and beyond. But in terms of what's going to take this season, even getting that win against Alabama in September, if it's not coupled also with an SEC championship win come December, I think that would be viewed as a huge disappointment, and I think it would rightly be called a failure. When you've reached the level that Georgia's at right now, the only thing that's going to be successful, is getting past that SEC championship, getting into the college football playoff. And we've kind of already seen that Georgia's not going to get probably the same benefit of the doubt that Alabama got in 2017 as a non-SEC champion making the playoff. Georgia's likely going to have that league championship trophy to punch its ticket. And so that's what December becomes all about. So it looks like some of you are doing okay here. Mike D says, this is true. I didn't see this, that YouTube said that their quality would be down for 30 days to keep from bugs, problems happening, so staff could be off for the coronavirus. I didn't know that. Is that true? I didn't know that. Maybe Mike's pulling my leg, but I didn't see that. Worm says he doesn't care what you're doing every single second of your life. I don't know what that means to me or anybody else, but he says that his internet's cleared up now there as well. So there you go. George Herndon says, too much talent, no excuses for Georgia. And I think that's probably the way to say it. And if Kirby Smart were allowed to get within 6 feet of us right now and sitting here with us right now, I think he'd very well say the same thing. I mean, one of the things about Smart, I think it's always been good, is that Smart knew what he was signing up for when he took the Georgia job. The guy that was his predecessor was winning like 10 games a year. So until Smart won 11, he wasn't even doing better than the last guy was. And when you take that job knowing full well what you're getting into, at that point in time, you're just you realize the pressure that you're signing up for. So if Smart were here, he'd embrace that. And it's true, as George mentioned, when you've got the kind of talent in place that Georgia has, being second best in the SEC is not the kind of thing you hang a banner for. That's exactly right. Phil Rogers says, keep using your wife's shampoo for the beard. So a lot of people say you shouldn't do that. You should use the beard oil. But honestly, given the coronavirus lockdown, I'm not even quite sure I can find some beard oil. What I've basically been using is, not to sound, high maintenance here, but I have this like face cleaner that I use in the shower, and I just rub that on my face. Everything seems to be fine for right now. Andrew Belk checking in from Raleigh. He says Raleigh's all dogs. So, listen, a lot of Georgia fans there in the Tar Heel state, to be sure. Mike D says that he doesn't pull legs. He is worried about UGA losing all this talent, not having spring practice. No one realized that Bama lost quarterback and two best wideouts. They're going to struggle too. I think that's probably right, Hunter. And that's one of the things that Smart talked about yesterday. He did acknowledge that it is tough on quarterbacks when you don't have the spring practice. And that's just a practical reality. But it's the kind of thing that, as you say, everybody sort of deals with. That Alabama's got a quarterback competition. LSU's breaking the guy that's barely played. I hate to be cynical, but if there's no spring practice, there's also no spring practice transfers after you don't win the starting job. What's the meme that everybody always uses on Twitter where the guy's like pointing to his brain? You can't have players going to the transfer portal after spring practice if you've got no spring practice. So for a lot of these programs that don't want to lose their backup quarterback, maybe there's a blessing in disguise for all of that. Charles Kaiser says the lips and audio aren't aligning here. I guess it'll be like a Godzilla movie then, maybe. Elite GB says it's just more time to get fully ready. Could be a blessing in disguise. Yeah, maybe so. I mean, I think if you look at teams as set up to handle this as anybody, you'd make a case that Georgia could be. It's not perfect for anybody. It's not, I don't think, devastating for anybody either. I continue to believe that, like, the physical conditioning part of this is the most important thing. And it's not going to be felt program compared to program. In other words, I don't think we're going to be sitting here in November saying, well, Georgia handled this well. Tennessee obviously didn't. Florida handled this, let's say, poorly. Auburn handled it well. I don't think you're going to say that. I think you're going to look at some individual players and say, ooh, that guy just did not show up in shape. That guy had a hard time getting going. And it'll be a couple of guys on this team. Probably Georgia will have a couple of guys on that team and so. So I think all of this is going to be felt individually more so than it's felt collectively. It's very easy to eat chips or eat candy or eat all this kind of stuff. And if you're eating that kind of junk, those carbs and things like that, it's hard to do enough exercise to burn that off. For the players, I think it's even more true, even though their metabolism is a lot better than mine is, that what they put into their bodies, whether it be, junk food or things like that, they wouldn't maybe typically be eating if they were in Athens. Controlling your nutrition, I think, is a lot more challenging than controlling your strength and your strength and conditioning, because a lot of these guys like working out. A lot of these guys, whether it be home spun workouts, whatever else, a lot of them are not going to allow themselves not to be doing push-ups, whatever else they can be doing. But I never really met anybody that just loves, eating the best possible food. People like to cheat on food stuff a little bit. So that to me is going to be one of the bigger challenges all the way around there. Chad Buchanan says, why do we keep missing out on the top running backs the past few years? Well, obviously Kendall Milton is an argument against that, but I get the point you're making. It seems like Georgia has had some high-profile misses. Johnny Brick Jr., Trey Sanders, what looks to be a couple of guys for the class of 2021, Travion Henderson, who was pretty quietly. Running back is a bigger need for Georgia than people realize. It's kind of one of those things of, well, it doesn't seem like a need now because Georgia's got like 8 gazillion running backs. But what happens after this upcoming season when, Zamir and James Cook are 3 years out of high school, or what happens, and I hate to say this, but it's just a fact because running back's a very physical position. What happens when one of the running backs that Georgia's counting on gets hurt? Now, I'm not wishing an injury on anybody, nor am I predicting somebody will get hurt. But running back is a position where it's likely that somebody will get hurt. So it doesn't take a lot for running back to become a position of need. And I think that I do think it's important that Georgia get back to the business of recruiting multiple elite running backs in a class. That, it's great that Georgia's gotten the guys that it's gotten, but it's also important to maintain that. That typically means 2 elite names per class. I think in most cases, that's what Georgia's going to be looking to do. Bobby Bryan checking in after being on YouTube the other day, back on Facebook here. John Benton says he can't wait for the memes the next time Tiger wins a golf tournament. So I did see, John, by the way, that it looks like Tiger and Phil may get together for another match event between the two of them, Phil Mickelson, and it may raise some money for the coronavirus stuff. And, one of the things I think I've told you before is I'm a big believer that golf, as much as any sport, it's almost cooler if there are no fans in attendance. Whereas, I'll make a quick professional wrestling point here for a moment because I know not all of you like wrestling. I have been watching some of the wrestling that's been taking place in the empty buildings, and to start off with, it was kind of cool. Lately, I've kind of gotten a little tired of it because, like the other day, so bad guy jumps in, attacks a good guy from behind. 2 bad guys are beating him up. And then good guy kind of runs in from the back to come in and save it. Like in a regular wrestling event, the whole point of that is the crowd's supposed to cheer when the good guy rushes in. But when the good guy rushes in, there's no crowd to cheer. The whole thing just sort of falls flat. It's just kind of way too quiet. I think this is where you kind of compare college football to, say, golf. Whereas I think, let's say that you had the Masters. Now, the Masters is a little bit different because the roars of the crowd there are pretty good. But let's say you had like the U.S. Open or something like that with no crowd. You get a chance to appreciate the course better. You get a chance to sort of see the undulation of the grounds. I think golf with no crowd is actually pretty fun. Tiger versus Phil, if it takes place in a few weeks as a fundraiser, those guys are staying socially distanced apart. I think that with no crowd could be really fun. If we had to play college football without fans in the stands as a way of just getting games taking place, obviously you'd have to be for it. You'd have to do whatever you could to get the games going on. But ultimately, college football is one of those sports that's so impacted by crowd, noise on defense, things like that. Every big play, you think about how the crowd reacted to the big play. I would have to say that college football would be very, very weird if it were to take place with no fans in the stands. I'd have to say that. Michael Lifton, a very funny question in the comment section. Dallas Short says, we're going to do our part to bloody those Bammers in the nose in the opener for you. He means USC. Don't expect any sympathy from us in the playoffs, though, with Slovis slinging it. So he's excited about the fight on from USC. I have seen some buzz for USC being one of the surprise teams in the country this year. I have seen some of that. I have. Jimmy Hoskins says, too much talent at Georgia. Anything less than making the college football playoff is unacceptable for UGA. I'd agree with you on that. I think that's the kind of year. I think that's probably true there on that front. Let me get ready to grab a few of my graphics, get that going in. David Johnston checking in. Great to see him. Let's see what else is going on over here. Let me find a few more comments. Somebody mentioned about Zach Evans. As I said before, I don't quite know what to expect from Zach Evans. Not quite sure. Randy Hall mentions Nolan Smith. I think that by the way, Mike Gase says take your hat off. Listen, there's not a chance in the world I'm taking my hat off right now, because in addition to the beard, part of the beard strategy is distracting all of you from how long my hair is getting. And I know some of you probably cut your hair at home anyway. Maybe eventually I'll do that as well, or at least have my wife cut it. I guess I'm just afraid of that not going well and me having to show up on video every single. So yeah, you're not going to see the hair today. It's not quite video worthy, but it is getting long. You can see on the sides how long it's getting. Imagine how long it's getting on the top. So that's not going to happen. But somebody mentioned Nolan Smith before. Pete Ellis says WrestleMania has already been taped. No crowd, just strange. Yeah, it's a strange time. It's a strange time. Bob Garrison also mentions those WrestleMania replays they've been showing on ESPN. We've been watching all those. That's actually been really good entertainment. We've watched a lot of those. I want to say FS1 may have had the Royal Rumble on this week too. So there's been some good stuff there in that regard. But the point that I'm trying to get into is somebody on Facebook a moment ago mentioned Nolan Smith. And by the way, good to see Troy Sadowski over here on the Facebook comment section as well. The legendary former Georgia tight end. Always good to have him checking in, talking about those Georgia running backs. But to get to the point I was trying to make about Nolan Smith. So here's the thing I think we get to for me in terms of determining, is Georgia really – we know they begin the season as a championship contender, but is Georgia actually going to win the thing? Here's, I think, the two things I think that you've got to see more of from Georgia. You've got to see more explosive plays on offense, and you've got to see more impactful negative plays on defense. And that's where a guy like Nolan Smith comes in. What you saw last year in the SEC championship against LSU, and I talked to Mike about this a little bit, that explosive plays are just the great X factor in a football game. Because Georgia last year was really good at limiting yards, really good at limiting points, but eventually against a really explosive team like LSU, you just can't keep that going forever. Eventually, they're going to find that opportunity to strike it big, and you don't have a great response to that. So Georgia has got to have negative plays defensively, more sacks, more tackles for loss. You've got to be able to have that to negate the explosive plays that eventually everybody gives up once they play a truly great offense, like what happened to Georgia in the SEC championship game. The 20-something sacks is not national championship level for UGA. They got to get more towards that 40 number. They got to do more of that. And that's where a guy like Nolan Smith having a really big year comes in. I think there's a really good chance that happens. But if we're talking about another year in which Georgia has 25 sacks, whatever the number was a season ago, for Georgia to win the national championship. By the way, I said the same thing this past year and heading into the start of last season, and it didn't happen, and you see what the results ultimately ended up being. The same thing is true on offense in terms of those explosive plays. Once again, you can go back and listen to previous editions of our show, whether you watch or listen, where I have talked about if you don't have more explosive plays, if you're not striking it big down the field, eventually you're just going to kind of come up short. Because what you saw from Georgia in, say, 2017, 2018, this wasn't the most explosive offense in America, but it was really, really efficient. But eventually, if you're not explosive, you stop being efficient either, because all of a sudden defenses just aren't scared of you anymore. They kind of figure out a way to defend against you. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Let me give a quick shout out to my friends here at Meriwether and Tharp, your source for Georgia divorce. Let me find their graphic here for a moment. We can get ready to throw that up on the screen here. This is obviously a tough time. If you find yourself dealing with a divorce, it makes it even tougher. Or if you feel like you're on the heels or at the beginning of a divorce process, certainly my prayers are for you on that. And that's a really hard thing. If you can save your relationship, you could. But many of you find yourself in a situation where just too much has happened, too much has gone on. And we all, listen, we all know people who've been there before. So we're all kind of in the same boat on that front. But if you are going through the divorce process, here's the thing I can tell you about Meriwether and Tharp. They are an incredible advocate to have on your side. This may be the first time you've gone through this, but they have been through this thousands of times. And that institutional knowledge that's developed over the course of that process can be put to work for you. But you've got to reach out to them. They'll do all the steps after this, but the first step belongs to you. That means reaching out for that initial consultation. Find them online at theatlantadivorceteam.com. Very easy to remember. Theatlantadivorceteam.com. Meriwether and Darby is your source for Georgia divorce. You can find them online at theatlantadivorceteam.com. Chad Clark says, any news of players testing positive? No, not that I'm aware of, at least around the Georgia front. I will say that as I talk to people who are a little older than me, who have maybe children who are teenagers or something like that, the one thing that you continue to see is getting young people to cooperate with quarantine, lockdown, whatever you want to call it. It's just really hard, right? And so when someone like Kirby Smart yesterday says, you can read this at DawgNation.com, but when someone like Smart says, hey, right now I'm just more worried about my player's health than anything else, I don't think that's a cop-out or a pivot away from something he doesn't want to talk about or anything like that. I think it's probably true. And I think these Georgia coaches probably privately behind the scenes are probably spending a good bit of time trying to figure out what is it that we can do to help make sure our guys are not only working out and eating what they're supposed to eat and everything else, but just kind of staying compliant with the social distancing. I mean, listen, a lot of these guys still are teenagers themselves, and it just does. I touch my face, which I shouldn't do. But it's just sort of hard to get them to get with the puzzle. It seems like the two groups of people that are not cooperating with the lockdown are the youngest among us and the oldest among us. It seems really, really hard to get them to want to do this. In a lot of ways, because of the mobility of the young and the vulnerability of the old, they are the most important groups to kind of get with the picture. And they've been the slowest, it would seem, to kind of come on board here. And I'm sure the Georgia coaches probably spend a lot of time talking about that. What is it we can do to make sure our guys are doing what they're supposed to do in terms of distancing themselves from other people? Because for young folks who are just sort of naturally social, that ain't what they want to be doing for the most part. Bill Kelly says, shaved head with a beard is a good look. Not that y'all care about this, but Bill, I will say that part of the reason for me growing the beard now is I wanted to see what it looked like if I ever did lose my hair, because last thing I'm going to be is big fat face, big fat bald head. I got to have something going on. So yes, if I ever were to completely lose my hair, and one of these days that may happen, I would definitely go facial hair all the way around. Phil Rogers says, can't wait to see what Coach Luke does in the offensive line run blocking. I think you already see some examples of what he might be doing. First of all, I thought that Luke had a very good Sugar Bowl. I thought his energy was super contagious. And as I mentioned with Jeff Sintel during the podcast edition of DawgNation Daily yesterday, when you look at some of the ways in which Luke is recruiting for the class of 2021, including some of the things that Dylan Fairchild has talked about, one of the guys that's recently gotten a UGA offer, it's pretty clear, Fairchild's a wrestler. Wrestling's about leverage, right? It's about, using your body and technique. It's not just about being 370 pounds, whatever some of these 340 pounds, whatever some of these offensive linemen are, that you go out there and maul people. So I think you're going to see a lot more movement among the Georgia offensive line under Matt Luke. At least that's the impression that I kind of get right now. And I think you're going to see a very energetic coach. Georgia's lucky to have Luke. I think he's a really good one. He's going to be very, very popular with Georgia fans. I believe he probably already is. But he's just going to be one of the I think the galvanizing figures for Georgia football. So I'm very much like you, looking forward to seeing what he brings to the table. Jake Shipe says, am I fat shaming myself? I probably should be. I feel like I've gained a lot of weight through all of this. Unfortunately. Hunter Davis says, do I think that Keely Ringo is going to get some playing time during the season? I think that's a yes with a caveat. The yes is obviously on the basis of the fact that Ringo is a really cool-looking athlete. Long arms, tall frame, super fast, like blazing speed. So from that standpoint, how do you keep a guy like that off the field, especially, potentially special teams roles, things like that? It's going to be hard to keep him off the field. However, his particular position, cornerback, is really deep right now. Georgia's incredibly deep. And we've talked over the last couple of days about the Tyson Campbell injury. I think that Campbell is a really, really valuable player for Georgia. I think he was really good last season before the injury, and I think that Georgia suffered by not having him out there. But playing DJ Daniel more, and eventually by the end of the season playing Tyreek Stevenson more, just gave you some additional experience at that spot. And so now Georgia's got a situation at cornerback where, assuming everybody stays healthy, you've got a lot of guys now who've played some pretty good snaps for you. So it's a little bit more difficult for a guy like Ringo to crack the lineup because of that, but he's probably just too good of an athlete to keep off the field for very long. George Hernan says we need to use a fullback. Wouldn't mind that. Stephen Venzani says, or I always say this wrong. I guess it's a Bonanzi. Pardon me, Stephen, for pronouncing it incorrectly. Says thoughts on the backup quarterback situation. There was a Newman injury. Fromm stepped in for Eason and was amazing. We have that quality backup that could do the same. I think in 2017, Jake Fromm made that transition look easier than it actually was. And I think that Fromm was really good at something that made it easy for Georgia to put a plan in place for him. I've always said about Fromm is that he was a really good, quick decision maker. Now, that means that sometimes you could look at a play and say, well, there was actually a better option for Fromm to throw to than the person he threw to. You can think of examples of that over the course of his Georgia career of he threw it here, this other guy was wide open. There may have been a better choice for Fromm to make. But generally speaking, Fromm usually made a good decision with the ball. And it seemed like in 2017 especially, a lot of that was kind of a pre-snap decision. Look to see where he could go, call for the snap, take it, and get rid of it quickly. The Appalachian State game, when Fromm first stepped in, was kind of an example of that. So therefore, Fromm had some comfort early that was sort of easy, that was not easy. Fromm developed some comfort early that was easier than he made it look. So would a guy like Beck or Mathis or Stetson Bennett be able to do that as well in 2020 as Fromm did in 2017? I think it's unlikely just because I think that what Fromm did was actually pretty rare. Now, you can have some debate if you want to about how Fromm developed beyond that. Was he as good last year as he should have been? And would he have been set up for success this year as you want him to be? You can have a discussion if you want to. But in terms of being a freshman quarterback, I think he was really good. I think Fromm in 2017 was better as a freshman than Eason was in 2016. Now, it's ironic now that almost for sure Eason's going to be drafted ahead of Fromm. So it would seem like over the course of years, Eason's become the better quarterback prospect, at least in the NFL's eyes. But if you compare Eason in 2016, Fromm in 2017, I think that Fromm had the better freshman season. Jake was a really good freshman quarterback, not throwing the ball a ton, but averaging more than 9 yards per attempt when he did throw. So he had a really good freshman season. The odds are if someone like Mathis or Beck stepped in, they'd have a hard time matching that success. I think that also is reflective of the new reality around college football, where the depth that Georgia once enjoyed at quarterback, having a Fromm backing up Eason, thinking it might have a Fields to go along with that, very few teams are going to have that kind of depth moving forward. Bob Garrison mentions the fact that the SEC has canceled its spring meetings, which take place every May in Destin, Florida, and probably no real surprise there. Phil Rogers says it's time for Kirby to start beating the Alabamas and the LSUs of the world. Yeah, those top SEC West teams. Yeah, that's a big test for him to pass. I will remind you, though, Phil, that last year Smart did take a step in that direction. It's easy to discount Auburn because Georgia has had so much success against Auburn, those Tigers. But until last year, Georgia had not won a game in a SEC West road venue, having lost at Auburn in 2017. So as you say, well, it's time for Georgia to beat Alabama and LSU. Don't forget that Georgia took a step in that direction. Very tough road environment against a very good Auburn team. Georgia won that game on the road. That may only stand as minor progress, and it's no substitute for winning an SEC championship. Please don't misunderstand me. But if you're looking for an example of Georgia getting closer to eventually being able to get over that hump, what happened last year at Auburn, I think, is a step in that right direction. Let's get a few more. A lot of comments rolling in here on Facebook here for a moment. Matt Rugavina says SEC Media Days in late summer, the light at the end of this tunnel. And one way or another, I expect SEC Media Days to probably be greatly changed because of all of this, just because if all goes well, I hope, and I say this as a media person who likes media days, but if all goes well, I sort of hope the teams are using that to get ready for the season and talking to me via teleconference. But we shall see. Keith Old says Jake's best year was his freshman season. Of course, he was surrounded by better talent that season. I also think he took a step ahead in 2018 as well, but I kind of understand the point you're making. Robert Barnes says it's going to take 15 years for us to quit comparing Kirby to Rick. Let's compare Kirby's first 4 years to Rick's last 4 years, and I think that's probably fair. I also say that while the records for the two coaches look the same, or at least similar, I have always been of the belief that the deeper look at that favors Kirby over Rick. And y'all know, I say that as someone who's a massive, massive Mark Richt fan. But a couple of examples here. In the great early successful years for Richt, SEC championship in 2002, for instance, a couple of years after that. A lot of the really good Richt wins were close games, right? I mean, the David Pollock strip sack game against South Carolina. That's a highlight moment from that game. It was a win for Georgia that snapped a 2-year losing streak to South Carolina. So it's like this, pretty important win in the, early stages of that SEC championship season. But people forget that the South Carolina running back, was it Watson? I forget who it was, had a chance to go in for a touchdown that would have won the game for the Gamecocks. At the end of the game, fumbled and didn't get there. Georgia won that game very close. The point here is a lot of those early SEC wins for Richt were very close games. I'm not saying that to disparage him. I'm just pointing out the difference. That the early tenure for Smart at Georgia, there are a lot of blowout games. Up until the South Carolina game this year, Georgia had won every SEC East game the last, 2+ seasons by 14 or more points. So Smart was establishing his credentials by really whitewashing opponents. And obviously the recruiting speaks for itself. So overall record looks the same, but the key indicators below that obvious number, I do think favor Smart there. And you can, I guess, buy into that if you want to or not. Let me also mention my friends at Kroger here for a moment. Kroger's getting ready for the upcoming Easter holiday season. I want to make sure you're aware, even though we got the lockdown going, there is still a lot going on to get ready for Kroger right now, including right now with my friends at Kroger. You can save up to 50% on everything from egg fillers, candy, dye kits, and special treats for the kids there as well. The one thing my kids have been, let me make sure the Facebook folks see it. The one thing my kids have been very quick to say is, even though we're locked down and social distancing, Easter Bunny's still coming, egg hunt's still happening, Easter is not canceled. So my kids have been very, very quick to let me know that there will still be Easter this year, despite the fact that the overall feeling is not kind of what we're used to it being. So get ready for all of that with my friends at Kroger. I was there yesterday, and they got the Easter aisle set up just like always. And by the way, the one thing I'll give a quick shout out to Kroger for, and then we'll get back to your comments here for a few more minutes. The one thing I'll give a quick shout out to Kroger for is every time I've gone to Kroger the last few days, they've had what I've needed every single time. They haven't been out of anything. Now, it's not like just like, rows and rows and rows of everything like, you're kind of, used to seeing a shopping supermarket. But I haven't been to Kroger for anything yet and not seeing it on the shelf. So really, really good stuff there. And a lot of the truckers and stuff that listen to us and watch us, for those of you who are keeping those shelves stocked, we really appreciate you doing that for sure. We'll appreciate that. Let's see what's going on. Jay Shibe says, remember that Aaron Murray quick hike and knee to catch defenses off sides, which they would install that into every quarterback's arsenal. Yeah, Murray was good at that. David Green was really good at that too. He was really good at that. Really good at that. Let's see what else is going on. We got a few minutes left for a few more comments. YouTube was on a nice roll earlier with some good comments. It's kind of falling off the pace here a little bit. Frank DiCarlo Jr. says the Easter Bunny will be using social distancing. Yes, he will. But listen, the Easter Bunny knows how to do all that. Matt Rukavina says, I stocked up on all my Easter candy weeks ago before this lockdown craziness. We had no Cadbury eggs last year. So I don't typically give free plugs, but I'll give one here at Kroger yesterday while I was there. And I went for, basic essentials. But I did have to get, those Reese's eggs? Reese's is my favorite candy. I love Reese's Cups. But I really, really love the holiday themed Reese's. They're just like a little bit bigger. They're shaped a little bit different than the regular cups. They're a little thicker, whether it be the trees during Christmas, the eggs during Easter. Man, I love those things. I bought some of those yesterday. I did not need to, should not have, but they're like, the folks at Kroger know how to do it. You walk down the aisle and you see that thing staring at you. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna have to social distance with some Reese's candy here. So I enjoyed a couple of those last night, and I am not too ashamed to say that for sure. Matt Rugavine also mentioned that nobody sold that fake handoff like David Green did. He was good at that. I think Chris Winkie kind of made that famous with Rick at Florida State, and he brought that to Georgia. And Green was really good at that for sure. Jeffrey Duran says he wants that hat. Yeah, I like my DawgNation hat for sure. I really enjoy that. I'd love for us to make more of these available to other people. I would like that. I like that. Hold on, let's see what else is going on here. We got time for a little bit more comments. Matthew Dill says we won a lot of games under Rick with superior talent that were nail biters. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for like the one knock on Rick, then maybe the one thing that predicted that eventually the success was going to slow down. Some of the great games, Alabama in 2002, uh, on and on you go. There were just too many of those games a little closer than they should have been. Florida in '04 was a close game. Florida had fired Ron Zook. Georgia had to have the late touchdown to win that game. Over the course of time, close games have a way of kind of going the other way eventually. Now, Georgia had its occasional beat down. The LSU beat down against Nick Saban in '04 was certainly a really good day there in that regard. But when a lot of your wins, especially SEC wins, when they're close wins, it's a hard thing to maintain over the course of time. I think that's probably fair to say. George checking in, then checking out. Glad to have you here. Hunter Davis says, "Do you think that Ladd McConkey gets special teams return time?" I know that he'll get certainly a look at that. I know that's going to be one of the things that happens. One of the things I've been impressed with about McConkey when you see his film is how much quickness he shows in such a small space. So if you thought about him as a punt returner or something like that, obviously the ability to make someone miss, he's just very, very quick in short bursts. So I could potentially see him having a role there in that regard. I could see that. Elite GB says he was looking forward to to G-Day to get a chance to meet me, but that's down the tubes. Well, Elite, I would love to have met you as well, and we'll have plenty more good G-Day memories in the future, opportunities to get together. I hate that it's only place this year, but we'll have plenty more of those in the future. Jay Shipe says to Google search the new Falcons uniforms. They are out. Maybe not officially by the Falcons, but I think the Nike released them. So I've seen these mock-up helmets that various people have done. There's the one that has like the red on the sides with like the black going down the middle that I actually think looks pretty good. So some of the mock-ups from fans that I've seen, I actually kind of like. I kind of like those. Johnny Lester and some of the disappointments from the Rick era. Yeah, there were always a couple of those, it seems like. Travis Hall says if David Green was their quarterback for the next 3 years, he'd win 2 of the next 3 national championships. He was awesome. Yeah, for folks that tune in to DawgNation Daily and are part of the show, and I think they've sort of maybe either forgotten or maybe weren't around to see some of those big games that Rick was a part of back then. Rick was just really, really good there in that regard. I'm sorry, Green was just really good there in that regard. So I completely agree with you on that. Let me also mention a couple of other things here from a video standpoint. I said this at the beginning of our show. Let me take some time to say this now as well. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern time on the YouTube page. So if you're a Facebook watcher, we're going to be on YouTube for this. It's going to be Cover 4 Live through the magic of video. Myself, Jeff Sintel, Connor Riley, Mike Griffith, all getting together, talk about some Georgia football together on video. We'll do that tomorrow, 3 p.m. for a very special Cover 4 Live on YouTube. I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to be really fun. We're going to try that technology for the first time. And, of course, don't forget tonight, 6 p.m., Before the Hedge is presented by Kroger. Jeff doing that from his home, maintaining the social distancing. And, of course, don't forget about Kroger there for that as well. They present that show. They bring DawgNation Daily to you here also throughout the week. So check out Kroger for all your needs. And, of course, Jeff Sintel for Before the Hedge is presented by Kroger tonight. All right, we'll roll into our R.S. Andrews cool down here, and we'll get ready to get out of here after that. A couple more comments, and we'll get ready to kind of get going. Adam Geis feeling good about the Dan Mullen versus Kirby Smart matchup. Sounds like he's a Florida fan, so hope you don't get too disappointed about that, Adam. Jordan Harris says, how do you feel about the black face mask? For whatever reason, I've always liked white face masks. I don't really know why, but I've kind of always liked them. They can look cool. The black face mask can. Somehow the white makes the G pop better. The white face mask makes that black G really pop. That's kind of my opinion on that. Johnny Lester says the Gators defense is going to struggle in big games this year. Big step backwards this year for Florida. There's obviously a lot they got to try to replace. I would say that's fair. I would say that's a fair point. Christopher White checking out. Christopher, thanks for being on the program here today. Matt Talley continued to talk about Mark Richt over here. Hunter Davis says, what about black uniforms? Listen, at a certain point in time, I'm so happy. I'd be so ready for football to return. I don't care what color Georgia wore, as long as they're back on the field again. But when you got the red, black, and the silver, you got a lot of cool combinations you can potentially use there. Christy says when it comes to Roquan Smith, who somebody mentioned earlier, you can always watch him play for the Bears. Yeah, Roquan's turned out to be a really impressive pro, and we're not surprised by that, but just one of the greats to ever wear a Georgia uniform. And I think he celebrated a birthday this week. Am I right about that? Roquan have a birthday this week, I think, maybe. Michael Webb says when it comes to uniforms, we have a clean, classic look. Don't mess with perfection. And for the most part, I kind of agree with his point on that. I kind of agree with that. Michael Porter says he loves to have Todd Gurley in the ATL. Yeah, I think that's going to be a fun thing for the Falcons. And the Falcons have done pretty well thus far at marketing that. I think they've been pretty creative at this moment, and I think that's been pretty enjoyable. Jordan Harris asked about the black pop and shine and look good. So I kind of like that. Graham Nicholson said, I said a moment ago that I'd watch Georgia play no matter what color uniform they were wearing because I'm so hungry to see football again. Graham Nicholson says, not pink. Once again, to do a pro wrestling reference here. If you go back and look at the old 80s Heart Foundation, the hot pink and the black, actually didn't look too bad together. So I guess if you did that as a football uniform, that might not be bad. I wouldn't want Georgia to wear it, but had Georgia done something like that for the Arkansas State game this past year in honor of Wendy Anderson, that actually looked kind of cool. But you can't really do that on short notice. Matt Talley asked about Leonard Floyd. Did he get picked up by anybody? I'm not quite so sure about that. That's a good question. I'm not quite so sure. All right, we're going to have to get ready to go here in a moment. Let me also say thanks to our friends at R.S. Andrews for making the R.S. Andrews Cool Down possible. We do that every day here live on video. And don't forget to check out the podcast for the regular version of the show. Our video right now is almost like a long version of the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. But if your air conditioning goes out, let's face it, some of you are going to be dealing with that. It's going to be sunny right now, warm. You're cranking up that AC. Well, don't forget that R.S. Andrews can get your system back to factory fresh specs, but you got to check them out online at rsandrews.com. Also, make sure you check out my friends at the AJC. The daily AJC e-paper is free for now. You can follow all the coronavirus news there on that. Also, happy stuff as well. Dolly Parton's doing a video reading for kids. All the good stuff that people are trying to do right now. The AJC is doing a good job of kind of trying to chronicle all of that. So you can keep up with all of that online at ajc.com. Make sure you check that out. All right, well, let's do one or two more. We're going to get ready to go. Get ready for the podcast. Travis Hall says the kids are doing a great job of the advertising. Yeah, I'm really thankful to have them. Really thankful to have them, and it makes it fun, right? We miss being in our studio, and I can't wait to be back there again sometime soon. But for now, we're trying to make the best of the situation. So I appreciate all of you being patient and accommodating with that. Jermaine King says an occasional jersey change like the Vince Dooley days would be great. Yeah, different people just have different feelings about that. Some people, like one of our previous commenters, says, hey, it's too class of a look to make any changes to. And some people say, yeah, but the color scheme's so cool. There's lots of fun things you can do with it. This will always be one of those things that some fans have some disagreements with. Anything else before we go? Anything else? Let's see. Bob Garrison, thanks for the kind words. Philip Jordan Wells says, let's get disinfected. Yeah, so listen, not that you care what I think, but do your part. Wash your hands. I find myself washing my hands 100 times a day right now. Now, I'm still touching my face all the time, so I haven't been able to successfully stop doing that. But in terms of making sure my hands are clean, I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job with that. We've done a good job of staying at home. We're even distancing ourselves from our neighbors. So I feel like we're kind of getting that done right now. I hope all of you are doing the same thing. And I really do believe that there's going to be a story of triumph to tell when all of this is done. And I think we're going to be part of that story. So thank you for being part of this story here on DawgNation Daily. Hope you all have a great day. Listen to the podcast. I'll see you tomorrow at 3 for the Cover 4 Live on YouTube. Jeff will see you tonight on Facebook for Before the Hedge is presented by Kroger, and all across the platform of DawgNation for plenty of great articles and content as well. You have a great day, and I'll look forward to seeing all of you back then.